So what happens now? So for the viewers out there, we've got this little thing that plays up in the beginning, because according to Nick, when you're watching a live stream on YouTube, that first 5 seconds, you have to go and hit the little slider thing to say unmute. Yeah. So all live LinkedIn sessions will have that little thing to tell you. That's what it is about. That's why at the end of it, it gets to that point where it says unmute to hear us. So don't be dismayed. It is a very functional, informative 8 seconds of your life in order to get you to hear us.
I feel like we should talk about what we're going to talk about in today's show.
Do we do the intro before the jingle or after
We do the intro before the jingle. Do the intro and then I'll roll.
Do I have to like a welcome? That one.
No. That one comes after that one. So
is that after the jingle? After.
So
in today's show, hold on, wait. Do we talk about today's show now and then? Sorry, show. People, we're still practicing how the flow of the segments in the show goes.
And we're practicing live. So just, we're trying.
In today's show, we are carrying on the theme from the last 2 episodes and a webinar Nick and I both did around application security. And we are going to be talking about the top security vulnerabilities certain people on the interwebs have seen in 2021.
Roll the jingle.
What? I'm not Peter McKinnon.
I'll say it again. I love the jingle.
I'm not Peter McKinnon. I was going to do the what's up, everyone. Welcome to SCI Fridays, your portal into all things security, compliance, identity management, and you.
If you are new to this channel, we talk about things that get us excited and scared, but mostly excited about cloud security and governance. So I'm going to throw the problem statement over to Al. You just migrated your customer's application to the cloud. And this is a traditional customer. So we're not talking about Feldschooner and shorts and wearing shorts in winter.
Wow,
we're talking
that's a demographic. You poke the bear. You poke the bear. Look, although fellies are good though, right? You get really cool fellies with color laces and color soles, right? There's red, blues, greens. It's very hip, very hip. If we had to create an Oregon in South Africa, right? Yeah, so that's where all the hipsters come from, right? All the IPAs it's where IPAs were born, right? In Oregon, right? That's sort of 2 hours north of Seattle. That's where plaid shirts came from, tight jeans, and
I feel like we're getting away from the offensive part of the show. And I don't mind saying that I'm an equal opportunity offender, no matter the demographic. We have something that will offend you.
And speaking about being offended, most people get offended when they get hacked, right, Nick?
Nobody likes being hacked, but kind of very, it's kind of like COVID. Have you been hacked yet? Have you been there? Have you experienced it? Have you been vaccinated for hacking?
Vaccinated for being hacked. And that's exactly what we're talking about today. How to make sure that your application running in the cloud is vaccinated. That's so cool.
And we are not just pulling these things out of our ears, even though we're really good at putting things out of our ears. We're going to refer to an external authority that even Microsoft refers to, which is Open Web Security Project, and we're going to talk about the top 10 things. With the mirroring of cameras is difficult. 10.
It's
all right, people. There's 10 right? In there. Yes.
OWASP. Okay. Open Web. Where does the A come from? Because there's no A.
I feel like we're drifting, and people are going to be changing channels. So I think you need to get into what are the top 10
All
things
right.
that we care about in 2021.
So traditionally, your approach to perimeter security in the old days, when we were hosting an application on top of a web server, and that server was in a DMZ in a building that you controlled access to, you would
That's
be
right.
able to pull the network cable out if you were hacked,
Yes.
right? Or something was compromised. And in that vein, we talk about moving customers to the cloud, and there's a modernization play. And generally, customers would normally say, "Hey, I want a firewall because that's what I understand," and I create a network security group, and that sort of mimics my DMZ, and I've got a DMZ. But yet, in today's world, we talk about application level security. It's no longer just ports, right? Because there's some form of interpretation when it comes to protecting your applications. In this case, specifically web applications, because 9 out of 10 times you're not terminal servicing into a box, and then you've got a thick client there that you're connecting to, unless it's some accounting system that you're still running. It's usually accessed through a portal, right? And you want to publish this application to the internet so that it makes your user experience better. And that's really what we want to focus on today in this episode, in this season of SCI Fridays. Nick, because this is season 1, episode 5.
That's right.
Of 1 season, right? So we went out and we scoured the internet because we have customers asking the same questions, and we wanted the definitive authority, the definitive authoritative figure, and we stumbled across onto OWASP. Right. And OWASP talks about the top security vulnerabilities that they've experienced, or their customers, or this study that they've cast over 2021 around what problems there were. And lo and behold, on the top of the list, what do you think there is, Nick?
Look, I'm a traditionalist, even though I don't wear short shorts and fellies, but I reckon it's got something to do with data.
It does. And even Star Trek Discovery in season 1, they talked about a SQL injection, and I referenced it at one of the Azure boot camps. We're still having SQL injections today. And it's something that will always, I suppose we're plagued by it, right? Because, it's an injection is a security vulnerability that allows an attacker to access something, and it's mimicking, a user or it's mimicking an action inside of your environment. And the first one is really around SQL injection. So when we look at how do you protect your applications, we talk about web application firewalls. And it's different to a traditional on-prem firewall. And I think that's the point of today's show, is to explain the differences between that firewall appliance, that piece of tin that you bought, be it a checkpoint, be it a FortiGate, I can't remember the difference. And in Microsoft Cloud, we've got what we call an Azure web application firewall, right? Instead of putting it behind a jump box, well, not a jump box, but a traditional gateway with a traditional firewall. And companies like FortiGate, Fortinet, and all the other ones, they have web application firewalls, not their traditional firewalls. So our recommendation is to use a web application firewall of sorts. And why we want to do this is because you've got things like SQL injections, cross-site scripting, you've got protection against common attacks. Well, you've got web attacks, right? Like command injections, cross-site request forgery, a few others that URL access, right? And when we look at what's available in traditional firewalls, and web application firewalls, we're going to reference the stuff that we know is available in the Azure WAF, right? So Nick, take us through a couple of those things that's available as a protection layer inside of a normal traditional Azure WAF.
Well, I think I just want to take a step back quickly and look at the problem framing that we have, which is you've taken your application from your data center, you shifted into Azure, and you hoped everything was going to be okay because, well, it's over port 443, right? Except that you've massively increased your attack surface, and you've talked about things like, oh, well, what do I do about a SQL injection? And what do I do about cross-site scripting? And these things, these attacks, they're not new. And the top 10 attacks that we have against vulnerable applications haven't really changed that much, I'm going to argue, from last year, Alistair. And so the things that we're doing in Azure WAF this year is still protecting against SQL injection. cross-site scripting. We're looking at things like, and I love this one, HTTP request smuggling. So what am I doing is I'm using HTTP to encapsulate a request and send it to my web server for my web server to receive it, or my application to receive it, hand it off to my web server, going, I don't know what to do with this. And my web server says, pick me, I'll do it, because I know what to do with stuff, and it does something. And this is how we very quickly get to a remote code execution attack, right? HTTP protocol violations and anomalies. What's wrong with my request? I don't know, but I'll try and do my best to execute it. So our traditional web servers, they try really hard. They don't just do a 403 or a 401 redirect somewhere else. They tend to try really hard and say, I'm going to try and do something with this request, even if it appears broken, but my WAF won't. My WAF will say, It's like the parent bringing a teenager home and you don't like this person because you've seen them stare at your child and you think, this one's not going to date my child. So WAF is like the big mama or the big papa that says, no.
I ain't going back to jail. That's straight out of, what is that? It's a Will Smith, Martin Lawrence movie, man.
Yes. Or depending on your poison, it could be Madeira, right?
Well, no, this one is what is the one, the cops things, man? Mike
Bad
Lowry.
Boys.
Bad Boys. It's from that, right? When the kid shows up. Anyhow, we're digressing, speaking about movies and what you want to do with your kids. But I think it's important to note that when moving applications to the cloud, putting it behind not just a traditional firewall, a web application firewall, right? Because there's a rule set that does more than worrying about port forwarding, port answering, port sniffing, and things like being able to, and traditionally, what we've done, a lot of the security actually comes at an application level. So think about filling in a form, right? Where you don't want a bot to fill in a form because you can then have a denial of service attack where you've got bots just hitting that form, right? And a lot of times what they'll do, they'll put a little capture in there saying, tick this box if you're a robot, right? And that way we can stop bots from attacking, and that's one way of doing it. And there's a rule set inside of your traditional web application firewalls to say, well, deny all bots, right? Even Skynet bots, right? But some of the interesting things that I was not tickled pink about, but I really like that companies building web application firewalls have gone down this route to have a look at. So things like being able to and I look at it from a zero trust security part, right? Blocking specific countries and regions from gaining access to applications. I mean, just try to hit an insurance company website in the US, they just block the rest of the globe because we're all from shithole countries, right? Things being able to inspect request bodies, JSON and XML request bodies, right? Because 9 out of 10 times they want to inject something, right? And input fields is a perfect place for being able to inject malicious codes. That's how they deliver the payload, right? By being able to inject a payload into an input field. And what's nice about application firewalls is that they'll actually sniff the JSON and the request body that's coming through, right? And also detect certain anomalies, because these rule sets that you configure, and it's excessively granular because you can be very purposeful and very particular around how you set these rule sets up, is being able to understand what anomalies are. A firewall is not going to know what an anomaly is, right? Because it's going, well, is the anomaly, and you said it earlier, hey, but it's an HTTPS, right? I've got TLS version what, or HTTPS or SSL version what, but it's still not going to inspect the packet. Right. Same with caching around cookies and all of those things, right? I mean, one of the things that they were talking about is security misconfigurations, right? So what does that look like when we start looking at the vulnerability side of things? So what is vulnerable? We talk about vulnerable URLs and how the URL is constructed, and what a traditional firewall would not see as malicious or suspicious specifically around how the URL is constructed. it'll go, I'm passing it on. And you talked about passing it on. So the important part for me around utilizing a web application firewall versus a traditional firewall, and I see we were at time, is that we can build these rule sets to inspect packets, like using Wireshark with Ethereal in the old days, where we want to sniff the packet, understand what's in that header or that body, and then determine what we are going to do with it. And a firewall won't do that, but a web application firewall will give that.
So let me try and do a summary on the takeaway. For me, my takeaway is an application that's going to Azure shouldn't just be moved and stuck behind a traditional firewall, because your attack surface is dramatically increasing by moving to cloud. Unless you have some kind of logical protection from an identity point of view, so this is where we talk about things like conditional access, and another logical construct that actually understands the language of query that your application is consuming or being spoken to, in this case, HTTP type requests, sitting behind a WAF, very specifically a WAF. So a web application firewall, it knows what a web application is, it knows how to protect a web application against common attacks. The takeaway here is, when you move your application from data center to cloud, protect it using cloud-specific and cloud-native mechanisms.
You've heard it first. You've heard it here on this episode of SCI Fridays. If you like the show, please hit the like button and the little LinkedIn thing that says like. If you love it, there's a heart, right? You can do a heart thing. We'd love to hear your experiences with web application firewalls and what your likes and dislikes are. Please open up the comment section and hit a comment. And if you'd love to come onto the show, drop us a message below and we'll happily have you on the show. If you're looking for us, it's every Friday at 2 p.m. on LinkedIn. Get your friends around. We'll definitely see you there. You can find us on the interwebs and the Twitterati. I'm at Alistair Pugin, like it says there.
And I'm at Nicolas Blank.
Nicolas,
like Nicolas for the French.
And we'll catch you next week for episode 6 of SCI Fridays. Ciao, ciao.
Bye-bye.